Greetings Mythics and welcome to the Ink-Pot-Monkey review of The Wheel of Time. And this time it's the TV show, not the book series, although I probably will be doing a review of each book as well because I have just cracked into this. And when I say cracked into this, I'm on about page 640 of 770. So I was curious to know whether Amazon TV, Amazon Prime, because they're the ones adapting this, the book series by Robert Jordan and latterly Brandon Sanderson, and I was curious to know whether or not this best-selling 90 million copies, 14 books, over 23 years I believe, first published in 1990, I was wondering whether or not Amazon have actually done a good job adapting this, or is it just a load of old trollocs? Let's find out. Yes, as I say, I have read 640 pages. I believe the last three books were actually written by Brandon Sanderson, who's a big fantasy author who's sold millions of copies himself. And I was curious because there's always that question, can you adapt a book and make it into a good film or a good TV series? Now the answer is yes, it can be done. I really liked Blade Runner, the film, and also the book. Very different beasts. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was the book, and it's got a different plot to the film. So the film doesn't really follow the plot, but it takes the premise of it, it takes the concept of it, and I feel it captures the essence of what Philip K. Dick was trying to say with that novel. So it can be done. It is rare, but you know, let's find out whether or not Amazon have done a good job. Now the setting, for those who don't know, of The Wheel of Time is it's set in a sort of unnamed world. I'm not sure we ever get to learn if there's a name for it, unlike sort of Middle-earth, for example, from Lord of the Rings. That is simultaneously set in the distant past and the distant future. And the reason why that is because of the Wheel of Time. It's almost like time kind of happens all at once, I think. Believe you me, I'm no expert on this, so obviously if you're already furiously shaking your hand at me going, that's not right, you got it wrong, well, forgive me, because I'm only 640 pages in. And I purposely don't like to find out too much about something. I don't really want spoilers, so I might be completely off on that. Now this episode, so the Amazon released 3 episodes at once, and I've only watched the first one because I didn't really want to spoil, you know, I wanted to soak that episode up first, do the review, and then do episode 2 review after I've seen the episode. So I'm going to be reviewing them after watching each episode, and that will be an interesting development because obviously back in the day when I was a kid, you couldn't binge watch something. That was unheard of. You had to be there on the day, on the time. So it was a weekly, you know, episodic TV series that we used to watch. And of course you'd have to remember what happened the previous time. Nowadays they go previously on ER or previously on 24 or whatever it is. And you get a little recap. So I wanted us to review them straight after the episode because then I can remember what happened, although my memory isn't brilliant, so you'll probably find that out as well. Now this episode does, as far as I can tell, follow the events of book 1 fairly closely, and as you can tell it's a big chunky book, so they probably, I would imagine series 1 probably just follows the whole of the book 1. You know, there's 14 of these books, so I don't know how I'm hoping that this gets commissioned more and more, because it would be awful for them just to go, no, 4 series and that's it, we're cancelling it. Because then they'll be like, no, but yeah, because you can't wrap that up. You can't just quickly wrap it up. I remember watching Carnival, which was a fantastic TV series way back by HBO. And they did, I think, 2 series or 3 series. And it was like, oh no, you've crammed a whole wrap up in 1 series, because I think they found out early they were being cancelled, but they had planned 5 series and then they just had to cram everything in, and it felt slightly rushed but not too badly, but at least there was a wrap up, whereas it's going to be really difficult. So that said, let's let's crack into this. So episode 1 seems to follow it closely. Now there are a few changes, as you can imagine. I don't really want to give too much away in terms of plot spoilers. So the story basically revolves around 4 or 5 different characters. They are all from, not all of them, but some of them are from a small area called the Two Rivers, which is kind of loosely based on medieval Renaissance. I don't quite know the difference, but it's that kind of feel. It's Lord of the Rings territory is where we're going with this. So it's a nice sort of quaint village that, well, not quite as beautiful as Hobbiton, but it is quite quaint. You know, it's an oldie worldy feel to it. It's all wooden houses and natural materials, obviously, and everybody's dressed in, you know, oldie worldy clothes. And you've got 4 or 5 main characters. You've got Rand, Matt, Perrin, and forgive me for this pronunciation, Egwin, is that how you pronounce it? Ergwin? I'm not sure. I'm not very good with names. And Nereviv. Again, I don't know how to pronounce that. And they are, as I said, they're from the Two Rivers area, and they lead, you know, normal lives for that village. And as I say, it's oldie worldy, but there's always a but here, isn't there? There is a threat of a dark rising. There is a threat of, and it's sort of coming. It feels like it's building up. It's building up again, like Lord of the Rings. Now, it feels like there's a dark one. There's this legend and myth, and it's a dark one returning. And the dark one obviously needs people or things or creatures to do its bidding. And that's where the Trollocs come in. Yes, I don't know if Robert Jordan, I think he was American. In fact, I'm pretty sure he was American. He may not have known our swear word that is very similar to Trollocs. When I say our, I say the UK, England. So it's, you know, I'm a writer. I wouldn't necessarily, because of the word, you know, I wouldn't have called them Trollocs, but they're basically orcs. And they are kind of sent out now. They've been let loose and they're running amok. And they are after a dragonborn. There's a person that is going to apparently oppose. That's the feeling I'm getting from this at the moment. As I said, I've not read around this, so I don't know if I'm getting this right or not. It's just as I'm viewing it and as I'm reading it. But there seems to be a dragonborn that's going to rise up and oppose the Dark One. So the Dark One wants to strike first and capture the Dark One. But, haha, help is on hand because there are, I would sort of put, there's 3 sort of main, or 4 main categories. You've got the Dark One and his or hers henchmen, if you like. You know, they're the sort of evil beasts and evil creatures. Plus, you've also got the people from the Two Rivers, so Rand and Matt, Perrin, Egwin. It's going to be painful for people watching this going, it's not how you pronounce it. And Naive, I'll be pronouncing them differently every time as well. So look out for that. Leave a comment if you like that. Yeah, so you've got the Two Rivers, and in amongst them, apparently, is one of the Dragonborns. So they're not 100% sure who it is. And that then attracts a sort of powerful magician woman. I don't know what you call her. She is part of a group who, again, I'm not going to be able to pronounce. They are, I'm just trying to find it in my notes. Hang on, bear with me. Oh yeah, Sidia. Is that how you pronounce it? Sidia. When I read stuff like that in the book, I just go with the words. I don't actually spell it out in my head. I don't actually pronounce it in my head. I don't know if you're the same. I'm you know, I do have trouble with a little bit of words now and again. So yeah, so they are kind of like a powerful sect who are very mysterious, and they're a little bit feared by people. They're not totally welcome everywhere, if at all welcome. But they and we're not sure as an audience yet whether they're for the good or for the evil. It's very cleverly done. So it's a bit of mystery there. And there's a wise woman who she's part of it, and her name is Moran. Is that how you pronounce it? Moran. And she turns up with a Lan, who seems to be her travelling companion. He is very skilled in fighting, sort of a warrior. she has got the magic. She's very powerful, and she can touch into the source. Apparently, she can. It's like there's this magical source energy that she can draw upon, and she's very powerful. And those two, again, they arrive in the two rivers as well as the Trollocs. A little bit of spoilers, but they're after this Dragonborn, but they're not quite sure who it is. So that is the basic setup. There is a bigger picture to it all. There's lore and history and world building, but I've not read into that. As I say, I've not read around that. So I'm going on what I've read after 640 pages and watching one episode. So it'd be curious to know where exactly they'd start to deviate. I don't think they should deviate too much from the actual storyline and the plot. But yes, you can and you will have to change things. So already the biggest change I notice is that Rand is in the book set up to be the main character. And he's a shepherd. And he, as I say, lives in the Two Rivers. And his father is called Tam and his mother's called Kira. I believe that Kira died. That's the feeling I get. I can't remember. Again, I started reading the book about 3 months ago. My memory... Hey! But Tam is very much alive, and he seems to be the main protagonist from the book point of view. There's quite a few chapters in the early part of the book that follow his progress with his father. Again, I don't want to give too much away. But watching episode 1, they don't show any of that. It's basically them leaving their house, which is fairly close to the village where the others are. And they need to get help, so they spend time travelling. But episode 1, they've cut that. Now, I can kind of understand that because of pacing. And also in the TV series, I think they want it to be more of an even keel, rather than there's any one main hero or protagonist. So I can get that. It's a big, huge, epic TV show like Game of Thrones, where there were multiple characters that were the main characters. So again, they're trying to recreate that. So I can see them shifting it slightly. I'm not put off by that. It's very difficult when you're reading a book. You get to hear somebody's internal monologue. You get to hear their thoughts. You get to read their thoughts, and so it's very much inside as well as action, as well as physical stuff that happens. Whereas you can't do that with a TV show, so you have to work out ways of doing that and adapting that. So I can sort of forgive them for that kind of change. It just makes for a better adaptation. There was a slight confusion that I found with it, and that was the setup at the beginning. The first sort of 10-15 minutes was very choppy. So it just went from one character to the next character to the next character, and they didn't. For me, I didn't feel like I knew who they were. I was slightly confused. Now, I don't know if that's because I've read the book, and so I sort of had them in mind when I was looking out for the characters, or they just didn't do a very good job setting it up, because it's like, oh, is that Perrin? Is that Matt? I kind of knew who Rand was, but then it was like, oh, who's who? And so that did become clearer further down the episode. But I just wonder if people watching it and they're not fans, they're not hardcore fans, that they just might turn off because they might think, oh, hang on, I don't really know who's who. I do remember the similar sort of situation with Game of Thrones, but for some reason they seem to be clearer in what they were doing. They were very distinct character differences and their roles. Whereas if you've got, 3 or 4 people that are from the same village or nearby, then they're all going to kind of be similar. They're different, but they're going to kind of be similar. So it wasn't as though one was a king and one was a knight, and one came from the north and one came from the south, and it was all like that, like in Game of Thrones. Whereas they're all similar in that respect. That, as I say, that kind of got tidied up a little bit towards the end of the episode. I did like the themes that ran through the episode, and again, you've got various themes that run in the book as well. There is a feeling, like I say, of Lord of the Rings, and when I started reading the book, it was like, oh yeah, that's mirroring Lord of the Rings very, very closely. I would imagine that it deviates quite a lot. You've got 14 books, so I would imagine it deviates very far from Lord of the Rings, but it's got that style and the feel and the tone of Lord of the Rings, and that was done on purpose. Robert Jordan wanted it that way, you know, it was very much setting out to do that. So one of the main themes that you get in Lord of the Rings is power. You also get that theme as well that runs through here, obviously, but they explore it in slightly different ways. You've got, in Lord of the Rings, it's corruption, and power can corrupt. Whereas with Wheel of Time, it does feel like power, but how can you use power? How can you benefit from power? And so it's like the use of power. Obviously, you've got the Dark One that presumably wants to use it for evil, and then you've got our heroes who want to use it for good. But then you've also got the other factors, so the Morian, if that's how you pronounce her name, and the Sedeka, I can't pronounce it, I can't even remember it. That mysterious group of powerful magicians or magic spellcasters. Again, we're not 100% sure where they're going with, you know, they want the power. And then you've got, of course, you've got unknown power in the Dragonborn. So one of them is this Dragonborn, and then it'll be, do you accept power? Or are you going to, you know, push it away and say, like, I don't want this. You know, I was quite happy just living my normal life. But what I have to now, you know, whoever it turns out to be the Dragonborn, it's like, I don't know, you know, it's like, do I accept this challenge? You know, can I rise to meet this, or am I going to push it away? A little bit of that, you know, it does touch that on with Lord of the Rings and Aragorn, doesn't it? Where he's reluctantly accepting power after shunning it for so long. So you've got that dynamic going on. And I did like the fact that you've got the three, as I say, the three sort of factions. You've got the Two River people, you've got the mysterious magic users, and also you've got, oh yeah, I haven't mentioned yet, there's wise women as well, the wisdom. And they are based in the Two Rivers. So they're like the wise women of the village, of the area that can help people, it looks like, with healing. And, you know, they can touch the source of the magic as well. And you've got those factions as well in the Dark One, and they're all sort of, they're not buddy-buddy, they're not sort of all getting along beautifully. There's that bit of tension between them all, which really, really kind of adds a bit of depth and layer to each of, you know, to the factions. So you're not 100% sure where, you know, what their motives are. And I'm sure as the TV series unfolds, and also as I get further into the books, that will all be unfolded, and that's part of the fun, isn't it? Discovering, you know, who wants what and why, and then obviously what's going to block them. You've also got the theme of tradition and responsibility. As I say, it starts off as a village, and you know they're doing their everyday day-to-day lives, and they've got responsibilities, and you've got the day-to-day responsibilities. So Rand, for example, and I believe Matt, is it? He's a shepherd. They're both shepherds from the village, so they've got their day-to-day sort of job-related duties. Then we've also got. I was slightly confused by this, but I think Perrin. I'm not sure. There seemed to be a blacksmith. I thought Perrin was the blacksmith that was a bloke. It seemed in this TV series that Perrin's a woman, but I'm not 100% sure. That's what maybe slightly confused me, because there was a scene with her being a blacksmith. So I'm not 100% sure. But also one of them is, I think, no, it's Matt actually, who has other responsibilities. He's got, he's a prankster. He's a bit untrustworthy. You know, he's sort of a bit of a wheeler dealer, and but his friends trust him, and it seems like they potentially could be sort of loyal to his friends. But he also has responsibilities of, he's got a family, so his mother's a drunk, his father seems to be just sort of not, you know, just sort of there but not really doing much, just sort of useless. And then you've got the two, their children, i.e. his brother and sister, I think. There's two children, anyway, two younger children. And he seems to have that responsibility to feed them and to look after the family. So he kind of gets, you know, he's gambling, and he's doing things that you think, oh, he's just, you know, trying to live the life of Riley and he's a bit of a chancer. But he's actually doing it for a proper reason, i.e. he's got to look after his family, because his mum and dad don't seem to be capable of doing that. Now, I don't remember that from the book. I don't remember him having the family responsibilities. I might be wrong because, as I say, it's been 3 or 4 months since I've read it, and so again, little additions like that I don't mind. It sort of fleshes out the character a little bit more, and it gives him a bit more of a motivation of why he is like he is when we first meet him. So that's fine. So you've got your day-to-day responsibilities, but also, as I say, you've got the responsibility of a wider thing. What if your way of life is threatened? As citizens, do we have that responsibility to step up and stop the threat? I would argue yes. You know, if you can do so, you should step up and fight against it. And that is what our characters will start to do. They will start to take on the wider, bigger responsibilities. So also we have, which then tags into the coming of age, because, you know, without spoiling it too much, they have to leave their village, basically. They have to leave it. They're forced out of it. And it's their familiar life, it's their regular life that they seem to enjoy. Most of them seem fairly content. You know, obviously there's struggles and there's hardships, but that's what they know, and that's the way, that's their customs, that's their traditions. And they have to leave. So you've got that sort of coming of age, going out into the world, you know, like when we grow up and we go to the next stage. So when we leave primary school, you know, and we go into the secondary school, and then when we leave secondary school, we might go on to university or college, or we might, you know, get a job, and it's all those stepping stones of growing up. And so being forced out of your home, out of your area that you've known, you know, for, I don't even quite know how old these characters are, but let's say they're anywhere from 15 to 20. If you've lived there for, you know, most of your life or all of your life, it's going to be a huge shock. So it's, how do you cope? How do you overcome these difficulties and these struggles, especially as it's not been your choice? How do you cope with the trauma of that? And so again, we see when, from the book, when they leave the village, they start to explore, you know, they need to get to a destination to get safe. And that's how the book really unfolds. That's what the main bit of the book is about. It's about them traveling from one area, you know, from their village to a safe city. Episode 1 finishes where they have to kind of leave, where they're forced. So it was a good place to leave the episode. I liked the structure of it. Apart from that choppy bit at the beginning, it was a bit choppy, and then it settled down. And I've noticed other TV shows that if you've got a large cast, they kind of want to introduce all the characters at once. It's like, whoa, slow down. I don't need to know all the characters at once. Introduce them as with, you know, I'd much prefer it if they sort of maybe started with the village, or in the book it starts with, I believe it's Rand, who and his dad, who are walking back to their home. And Rand thinks he sees something. I think it's Rand. And then another, I think it's Perrin as well, thinks he sees something. So there's a growing threat. And that is in there. But I wish they'd followed that through into their house and then maybe cut to the village then. But it was just too much to begin with. But anyway, that's just me. It did settle down. I found it a little bit confusing, but not too confusing. So those were sort of the main themes in episode 1, and they do carry on, you know, as far as I can tell, into the book as well. I really did enjoy it. I wasn't a bit hesitant, because whenever, you know, somebody adapts something, there's many reasons why it could be, you know, terrible. You got a budget constraint, obviously. They've spent millions per episode on this, by the way, and it does look like that. The production values are very, very good. The music is good, you know, it's not overbearing or it's not jarring. The acting is pretty good. Again, you know, some are better than others, let's put it that way, but no one is terrible where you go, oh, that's awful. There is a slight mumbly one. I can't remember who it is now, but I just remember thinking, God, he keeps mumbling all the time. But that just might be the way that the sound is recorded. Who knows? So as I say, the production value is good. It looks brilliant. The aesthetics look brilliant. It's a world I kind of want to be in. I want to live in. It reminds me of Lord of the Rings. And who doesn't want to live in Middle Earth? Obviously, you know, you got to be a magic user, surely, in Middle Earth. You've got to be a warrior or a magic user. You've got to look after yourself. And it's got, so I like the look of it. I like the costumes. I like and also the because it's fairly faithful to the book, there is violence in there. It's not gratuitous. This isn't Game of Thrones level of violence and adultness, if I can put it that way. We did see a bare bottom, and I thought, are they going to try and crank it up to Game of Thrones level? And I thought, but luckily they haven't yet in this episode. If they did, I'd be slightly disappointed, because Game of Thrones is a different beast to Lord of the Rings. And I feel like it's more in the Lord of the Rings feel and texture and tone rather than Game of Thrones. And I want them to keep it in there. I don't need to see nudity. I don't need, don't just put it in because it's not really in the book that I've read so far. I mean, it might be in later on in other books, but so far it's not that. It's more the Lord of the Rings. So I appreciate what they've done. They've stuck to the stories. There's no hidden agendas in there from the makers. They've not tried to put their own messages in, which I think is perfect. You just follow the story, you follow the characters. And yes, if you are going to make changes, it's more to do with an adaptation problem rather than, oh, let's just do this for this sake. Let's change this character, from one, let's change this character from being a grumpy character to a happy character because we want them to like, we want the audience to like that character. No, if you've got a grumpy character, keep that character grumpy. That's probably why we like them. Yeah? So they haven't so far done that as far as I can tell. And they've embellished a few, characters, as I say. I think it's Perrin, I can't remember now. No, is it? No, it's Matt has got this sort of extra backstory, which I quite liked, I quite enjoyed. The CGI, the special effects, the fantasy element obviously is huge in this. It is very much set in a fantasy world. There's very much all the fantasy elements that can make up fantasy, and the magic. You get to see a lot of magic right at the end, which is fantastic. It looked good. I like the magic. The CGI, so that presumably, unless it's real magic, could be real magic. But the CGI for the Trollocs, the fight, I can't really say without spoiling it really. But there's a bit of a fight, Trollocs attack, and some of it was just a little bit rubbery. It reminds me of the Hulk, that film years ago, where it was just lightweight and it didn't look real or authentic. Now I understand it costs money to make something look really brilliant like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. Now they have put money into this. When we saw the close-ups though of the Trollocs, I believe that was makeup and people actually there. And that was the way to do it. In the background, it looked like there was some CGI stuff going on. It looked a little bit dodgy. But it wasn't enough to really break my suspense or, be furious and turn it off. So I thought they did a very good job with that. I like the way that they use the magic. So I'm looking forward to seeing more magic use. Because after all, what is fantasy? It has to be. You've got to have magic in there. And so I like that. I like the world building they've done. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a hit at this stage. Obviously, we're only one episode in. I will be watching episodes 2 and episodes 3 because, as I say, they've released episodes 2 and 3 as well. I'll be doing a review after each of those. But what did you think? If you've seen it, leave a comment. What did you think? If you're going to do spoilers, put spoilers and then put a lot of space just to let people know. It's a curious one, this, because you're going to get people that have read the books, years ago that love it and massive fans. I mean, I'm new to this, so it's not ingrained in me as much. And there will be people that go, oh, well, they've changed that, I don't like that. And that's fair enough. Fans are fans and they love what they love. I mean, I'm fans of things and I don't want people to change things too much. Equally though, if they've spent this much money, they need as many people to watch it as possible. So they have to make certain decisions that might appeal to a wider audience. And as long as they don't go too far, then, that's fine. But good characterization, good storytelling, good use of special effects. It's not there just to show off. It's actually in service to the story, which is how it should be. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But let me know what you thought. Until next time, let's explore the magic of fantasy.